This must look a little different if you've been watching the other two videos that I've produced for this particular painting. The decision I made at the end of the last video was that I was unhappy with pretty much everything I had done with the face. So it was easy enough to wipe it off because it was all still wet. And then I did go back in and add a little more cold wax with the greens and the blues just to get my texture back where it had been after I did the scraping. And so the decision that I made was basically I don't want to use flesh tones with her. I want to keep all of those beautiful blues and greens on her face as much as I can. So what I've got going on over here on the palette is I'm using Galc, the light version of the Galc. I'm using the white, burnt umber, and Payne's Gray. Of course, these are all oils because I'm working with the oil-based cold wax. And I will say this painting has had several weeks to dry completely. It's bone dry, everything else that I've done. So I'm working on a very dry surface. The other thing that I did was I scaled down the face. I decided it was taking up too much space on my surface. I wanted more background and flowing hair, I guess, to eventually show up. Honestly, I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but it just felt off to me. And I had learned a long time ago to listen to that little voice when things feel off. So as you can see, I'm working on the eyes right now. And the eye area is a little bit different. I really want to make her have some really intense eyes if I can. And so I am using black here, which my black is usually always an equal mixture of Payne's Gray and burnt umber. And of course, I'm going to add in the Galc. I'm not so much worried about transparency at this point. I do still want to apply a thin layer, and I like the Galc because, again, it's that speeding up of the drying. So, you know, the pupil, the eyeliner, I'm not going to worry about, obviously, lashes until towards the end. And the white of the eye. I think the iris, I'm going to use a little bit of the Payne's Gray and some white. And once I have that established, the white of the eye, again, you don't want to use straight white because the whites of the eye are rarely plain white. They've always got shadow and shading. And so I'm going to, again, probably be using the white with a touch of the Payne's Gray in there. So separating the pupil from the white of the eye might be a little problematic. We'll see how that goes. I think I may decide that I want her irises to be more intense. So I can play with that a little bit. That's the beauty of working in layers. And I probably will let each layer dry before I move into the next layer. So if I do something I don't like, it's easy enough to remove. I made the decision not to speed up this video. I decided that I would leave that choice in your capable hands. So if you don't want to sit here and watch me paint, I completely understand. Feel free to hit that fast forward button or skip ahead, whatever you need to do. It's fine. So I'll put a little music on now and let you watch as much of this process as you would like. I may chime in later in the video because I know I'm going to be adding some different colors, one of which may come as a surprise. So stay tuned. The eyes are where I need them to be for right now. And I'm going to start moving into the shadows, the deepest, darker shadows of the face. And I will primarily be using the Payne's Gray with the Galk. This is where I want to make sure I keep that transparency and I keep my layers nice and thin. I can always build them up if I need to. Again, I really want to make sure I keep that transparency. I can always go back and deepen shadows later if I need to, but I just want to make sure I can still see those textures that I laid down at the beginning. I'm working on the eyebrows now, as you can see, and in a minute I'm going to pick up a kneaded eraser because, again, working with these transparent layers, sometimes your sketch lines, depending upon what you used, are a little bit difficult to paint over. So a kneaded eraser works great. I can lighten those lines and yet still see have that indication of where that eyebrow needs to go from my sketch. I'll also take this opportunity to explain to you that I find it very extremely difficult to sketch on dried cold wax. I've tried lots of different chalks, pastels, pencils, and to no avail. So what I have found that works best for me, and I put my sketch on a piece of tracing paper, just the basic lines that I need so I know where the eyes, the nose, so on and so forth are. And then once I position it onto the painting, I take a piece of wax-free transfer paper. I happen to like Sorel. And this one was done with the white. It comes in lots of different colors. And then I use a very light touch and my stylus and go over those lines. And then they are transferred into or onto the painting. And if you're using a brand new piece, sometimes you get really, really bright white lines. And so that's where that kneaded eraser can come in handy if you do have a problem. I do find when it comes to lightening the lines with my kneaded eraser that the white is a lot easier to remove. It's also quite easy to paint over. It's just that I'm using those transparent layers, so it's making things a little more difficult. But still, I highly recommend trying that out if you struggle, if you find yourself struggling like I did. Now, could I use a paintbrush and sketch it on with, a value, a light value, dark value, whatever I needed? Sure, I could do that. But I really like doing my sketches on paper or directly onto the tracing paper because then I have my sketch always. So if I want to try a different version of this lady on a different type background, I don't have to go through. I mean, I've already got the sketch, right? I can make any changes I want to. It's done in pencil. It's easy to amend. But then I have a record, and I do try to keep most of my sketches so that I can go back and see what I've done, how I've improved, where I need to improve. It's just kind of a nice record. So I don't generally sketch directly onto my painting surface anyway. Now that I've said that, I'm sure I'll do it at some point because y'all know that when it comes to art, you can never say never because as soon as you do, that's what happens. So I'm not saying never. I'm just saying as a general rule, I usually do it on paper or tracing paper. Wow, I'm getting tongue-tied, so I'll be quiet now. So, how do I know where these shadows go? Well, I do have a reference photo, and I'll share that with you in the next video on this gal. So I'm looking at the reference photo, and I am basically looking for all of the, I'm not looking for, how do I put this? It's a lot easier if you try and forget that you're looking at a face and you focus instead on all the different shapes that come together to form the face. And some of the shapes are easy. They're triangles, they're rectangles, they're easily recognized by your brain because you've worked with them almost every day of your life. You understand that aspect of shapes. It's the oftentimes the irregular ones. They're a little harder to spot and a little harder to render, but with practice and time, you'll get to the point, I think every artist does, where you get to the point where when you meet someone and you're looking at their face, or even if you're looking at an animal or the landscape, it doesn't really matter. You will mentally start thinking to yourself how you would paint this. And you would mentally then start, the landscape or whatever would slowly disappear. I mean, this all happens obviously at the speed of light, so to speak, but you know what I'm saying. All of a sudden you start seeing shapes. Instead of a tree, you start seeing the darkest greens, the medium greens, the lightest greens, how the light's falling, and all those shapes then come together. Of course, not all the shadows are on the actual face, depending upon, again, how the light plays across the surface of the face. You'll find that you need to put your darker shadows on the outside, in the background, so to speak. Um, Maybe I could even call that the negative space surrounding the face. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to figure out, where that chin and that cheek lie. Still using that Payne's Gray, which in of itself is a nice transparent color, and a little touch of that Galk. And you can see I'm kind of still, again, scrubbing it in. And as you watch this, I'm sure you've already seen me I like using my finger. I like using my hands as tools. I have all my life. It just helps me kind of blend things into the background, make them disappear when they need to disappear. Now she might start to get a little bit scary. I noticed at this point that she has this really nice shadow across the cheek area underneath that cheekbone. And once I got it all on there, I looked at it and I thought to myself, it almost looks like 5 o'clock shadow. So, um, but never fear. Um, when you're painting shapes like that, sometimes that will develop. And actually, I see that as a good sign because this is truly seeing the shapes and not worrying about, blending. I think sometimes we overblend. And I think that happens because, again, you get wrapped up in seeing the face as a whole rather than seeing it in its different shapes. And as the painting progresses, you can make adjustments where you need to, if you need to make the face look more realistic. But I would advise always, always take breaks, get up, stand away from the painting. When you want to see the whole and how it's starting to come together, it's very helpful to get that distance, that perspective, so that your eye can take in everything at once rather than just, focusing on a shape that doesn't seem to be correct, when in all reality it actually is probably correct. And if you start blending or changing the shape, you definitely affect the face as a whole, and you might even lose some of those more prominent planes of the face. At this point, I made the decision I wanted to start playing around with some of the medium to lighter values that are in the face and scratching my head because, I'm really not sure. This is obviously something completely new for me, painting a green faced lady. I haven't done that before. So, anyway, I did put out some cobalt teal. Now, the company that makes my cobalt teal is Blue Ridge. It's a small company that makes small batches of paint, but I do like the colors for the most part, although Gamblin is probably still my favorite. But anyway, the cobalt blue is not really what I would call a transparent. It has quite a bit of opacity to it. It's more opaque. So I'm not sure. Trial and error, that's what it's all about sometimes. Now comes the surprise that I talked about earlier. This color is a flesh toned color. It's made by Williamsburg and it's called Canton, Canton Rose. Again, an experiment. I didn't want to use white. I didn't feel like I wanted to use a light blue. I guess I still felt like I needed to see I mean, this is a very cool painting, and I wanted to start maybe seeing some warmer tones brought in. So, will it work? I don't know. Um, we're going to find out. Now, this is where I'm playing a little bit with the color that's going to be in between more of a highlight value and a shadow value. Here on the nose where it starts to turn, and this is a very unusual angle, I think, on this nose. Um, but there is that area where you have to have that, I'll call it, for lack of anything better, that middle value to get that gradation as that nose turns. So you have that darkest dark on the side where the light is not, and then it moves into that lighter value on the ball of the nose there. Again, I'm experimenting, pulling in another color. Now, I will say, most of these colors, with the exception of that Canton Rose, can be found in the background. I'm trying not to introduce a lot of brand new colors at this point anyway. Excuse me. So this is Phthalo Turquoise. Again, this is another Blue Ridge color that I wanted to kind of, again, looking for those values that kind of need to bridge between light and dark, or maybe add a little more depth in some areas. Things are probably going to start to get scary again because I'm going to start now pushing these softer highlight tones all around the face. Now I do try at this point not to add my brightest highlights. And actually, I probably don't even have some of my darkest shadow areas on there either. I try, as I'm pulling things together, I do try to stay more in um, the middle tones, the darker midtones and the lighter midtones, rather than going straight for my darkest darks and my lightest lights. I think when you get to the point in the painting where you're really looking for those deep, deep, rich darks and those twinkles, those really high highlights, I think that's when you need to really be stepping back and looking at the painting as a whole to see where those need to pop into place. Coming to the end of the video now. She's obviously has a long way to go, but I am happy with where the direction that I'm heading. Much happier than I was before. I think she's really going to become a part of the painting, a part of the background, and yet still stand out. I don't know. This is exciting to me. I'm, like I said, I'm really enjoying this, and I hope you'll come back and see how she progresses. And in the meantime, if you have any comments or questions, please do not hesitate to go down and in the comment section and leave them for me. I can't promise that I'll get back to you immediately, but I will do my best to get back to you within the next 28 to 48 hours. So again, I'm enjoying this. I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope you're learning something. And I have the next video up and very close to ready to go. So please don't feel like you're going to have to wait another 3 months to see this lady progress. I just needed to get through those holidays, and I had lots of family. We had a joyous time, and we took a couple of trips as family as well, and it was wonderful. But everybody's gone home now, and I'm back in the studio, so I hope to see you again real soon. Thank you.